Welcome into the Giant Overreaction on a Wednesday for the gang one time, man. Y'all know what it is, man. I told y'all I was going to be tapping in with y'all at least once a week. And with the way that free agency started off, had to come over here on a Wednesday and tap in with y'all. Giants making some major moves on the defensive side of the ball. I'm definitely excited about these moves, man. I got to say, the way that the roster was looking going into, this portion of free agency, the Giants were, the cupboard was basically bare, if you ask me. A couple of pieces on the offensive side of the ball, a few things on the defensive line, but the way that Joe Schoen has hit the ground running on day one, and now here we are on day two, hoping to see if we could possibly get our quarterback. And I think that is the main piece for the New York Giants, to be honest. Whether this team's going to be a 4 or 5 win team or whether this team's going to be a team somewhere in the middle of maybe 8 to 9 wins, maybe a little bit more than that, I think it all depends on the quarterback position. Now, there is a lot of new news coming out. I felt like Aaron Rodgers was one of the front runners for the New York Giants when we talked about this on the last stream. And a lot of things have changed since then. And you guys know that I had a front runner quarterback that I wanted to target. And it does appear that this quarterback has been signed. But let's kind of just refresh y'all memory here a little bit. Big shout out to StreamYard for adding a couple of new features, too, that allow us to do a few different things here. But for me, the number one option for the New York Giants was Justin Fields. I thought he was a guy that could come in, a bit of a project, a guy that still has a lot of time left in his NFL career. He just turned 26 just a couple of days ago. He's entering his 5th year as a quarterback, and you see the numbers on the screen here. They're definitely very impressive, 3,241 yards in his last 17 games, 8 rushing touchdowns. This is the type of quarterback play that I believe the New York Giants could have benefited from and possibly won some games in 2025 and made it where when you sit down on your couch, you don't got to feel like, hey, I'm out here just rooting for losses for the New York Giants. So Justin Fields ended up signing a deal with not the New York Giants, but the New York Jets. Got a little bit more money than I thought he was going to get to. I thought Justin Fields was going to be a guy between like that 12 to 15 million AAV type of range. He ends up getting 20 million. That goes to show you how with the salary cap boosting up, how much more money some of these quarterbacks are getting. He signed a 2-year, $40 million deal with the Jets. And I love it for the Jets, although the Jets is really not a great landing destination for quarterbacks. You saw Aaron Rodgers there last year. And although he kind of got it together towards the end of the year, Aaron Rodgers ended with 28 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. It still was not enough to get the Jets, over 5 wins. And, you switch out quarterbacks for us. A lot of people are looking at Aaron Rodgers as an option. I don't know how much of a viable upgrade that's going to be for us, considering the way that he played last year with the New York Jets. And same goes for the Jets. Justin Fields is definitely my guy. Y'all know that I've been rooting for Fields. He's a guy that has a great raw talent, I feel like, but he has to correct some of those issues with, seeing the field properly, going through his progressions properly, and being, at the level of being an NFL passer. So good stuff for the Jets. Not so good for the New York Giants, who are still in search of their quarterback here. And that worries me because right now we're kind of running out of options at the quarterback position. And a lot of people are looking at it as Aaron Rodgers should probably be the likely guy who would come in here and be that veteran quarterback for the New York Giants. But he's visiting Justin Fields' old team today. He's going to be visiting with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And you guys know I chop it up with Pretty Ricky a lot over there on Twitter and whatnot. And from what I'm hearing from him, it's looking like Aaron Rodgers is likely going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler, which really leaves us with not too many options at the quarterback position. You got Russell Wilson still out there, which I would welcome Russell Wilson. And at this point, the money is really not the biggest of, detriments to me. This is not my wallet that we are pulling dollars out of. I just want to see the New York Giants go out there and field a serviceable football team that just makes watching games a little bit more interesting this year than it was in 2024, because by the time we got to October, I was completely uninvested in the New York Giants. So very unfortunate for us when you talk about Justin Fields. And if the rumors are true about Aaron Rodgers, I'll take Russell Wilson if that's the case, if we can bring him in here. But I was looking at Aaron Rodgers as being a more viable option for the New York Giants. But let's get right into it, man. Big shout out to everybody pulling in. I know a lot of y'all might not be familiar with the format of how we do the Giant Overreaction over here. And we normally do this show on Mondays at 1 p.m. But I felt like with, how important today is going to be for us in getting our quarterback. And this is the first day where teams can officially sign players. Everything that you've heard to this point are really unofficial deals, but they normally go down the way that they have been reported from guys like Ian Rappaport and Adam Schefter. But today at 4 p.m., a lot of these contracts are going to be, inked, and there'll be real deals, and there'll be the official contracts that are coming out. But let's get right into it. I wanted to, hit the ground running here today and talk about some of the free agent moves and whatnot. But again, I want to go over the rules for the Giant Overreaction. Let me not skip that. We normally place statements on the screen that either come from national media or social media. And if you see that statement on the screen as being accurate and you agree with it, then you can put a U in the chat to represent that you are going to be taking the under. If indeed you think that that statement on the screen is an overreaction, you can put an O in the chat to represent that you are going to be taking the overreaction stance. And if you're a little bit undecided, you can put a P in the chat to represent that you are going to be taking the push. Today, I got 3 giant overreactions. But before we get off into that, let's get into talking about free agency. A lot of moves made by the New York Giants. Let's get right to it, y'all. So let's talk about some of the more, I don't want to say meaningless, but let's say less meaningful moves by the New York Giants, the way that we started off the free agency period by signing Tommy DeVito to a 1-year deal, the only quarterback on the roster currently right now. We signed Casey Kreider, our long snapper, to a 1-year deal, $1.4 million. Chris Manhertz, who was kind of our tight end 2, tight end 3, I guess you could say. We signed him to a 1-year deal, and we signed our punter, Jamie Gillen, the Scottish Hammer, to a 3-year deal worth $9 million. And I'm sure you were feeling the way I was feeling after seeing those signings before the real signings, kicked off the last couple of days. And I was kind of feeling like, are you not entertained type of vibes. I was like looking at Joe Schoen like, are we going to be going through this offseason and this free agency period the same exact way that we started off last season and all the previous seasons without having real big splash moves? Well, Joe Schoen went out there and he signed former Ravens inside linebacker Chris Board to a 2-year deal worth $6 million. He's entering his 6th season, started just 1 game last season, 1 year in Detroit, 1 year in New England. He spent the first 5 years with the Baltimore Ravens. He went back to Baltimore in 2024. Basically a depth piece. You're paying $3 million for a depth piece. I'm not too angry about it, but it's nothing that's really going to move the needle. We also signed former Ravens defensive end Roy Robertson Harris to a 2-year, $9 million deal. He's entering his 11th season, spent his rookie contract with the Bears, started just 2 games last year. He's 31 years old. He's entering his 11th season, like I said. That's another move that doesn't really move the needle. We don't got to spend too much time on that. We also signed former Browns right tackle James Hudson. And this is like the first move that makes you go, maybe this is a viable move here, a viable option for a depth piece on that offensive line that absolutely needed some help last season. We signed him to a 2-year, $11 million deal. $3.5 million guaranteed. That makes me think that this is a pretty good deal because if it doesn't work out, you're not going to spend that much money. He's entering his 5th season, played 81% of the snaps last year with the Browns. I like his build, 6'5", 313. I watched the game against the Texans in the playoffs from the 2023 season, which was a game in 2024. And it was a mixed bag of reps. He had some good reps out there going up against some good competition with the Houston Texans. But then there were a couple of reps on there that had him looking kind of like Joshua Ezito a good bit. But nonetheless, I think it's an average signing. I'm not too upset about it. We needed help on the offensive line, and that brings in another body, whether it's going to be a camp body, whether it's going to be a guy that really doesn't get much playing time, which is the way that I would hope it would go. You want to see Andrew Thomas stay healthy this year. That'll really help out this offensive line. We saw this offensive line really go to shits after Andrew Thomas got injured, and that's been a reoccurring theme for the New York Giants over the past couple of seasons. Now, let's get off into the real signings, okay? And these are the ones that I'm sure got you excited, and these are the ones that absolutely got me excited as a New York Giants fan myself. And the number one signing that really had me jumping out my seat was cornerback Paulson Adebo. Now, we haven't talked about a lot of free agent work over here on YouTube. Most of that work was being done on Bleacher Report, but this was the number one free agent that I was targeting. We did a free agent show on Bleacher Report back in January, and there was only 2 guys in free agency that I wanted to target. One of them was the edge rusher, Dennis Gardick from the Arizona Cardinals, who was a guy that was coming off a major injury, but his stock was absolutely rising before he had that injury with the Arizona Cardinals. And the second guy was Paulson Adebo. And there were a lot of things that were attractive about Paulson Adebo for me. He was a guy that was coming off of injury. When Marshawn Lattimore was traded to the Washington Commanders, he was a guy that they had faith in being the cornerback 1 over there with the New Orleans Saints. And I felt that we were going to be able to get him for a pretty decent bargain. But Paulson Adebo comes in on a 3-year deal worth $54 million. It's an $18 million average annual value, which is way more than I thought we were going to have to pay for Paulson Adebo. I looked at Paulson Adebo as a guy that, coming off a broken femur, was probably going to get somewhere between like 7, 8 million, maybe like 12 million a year. But maybe that's just me, miss kind of targeting the market in the way that it has inflated here. But Paulson Adebo got a very nice bag. This is a very capable cornerback. He could possibly be a cornerback one for the New York Giants. 6'1", 192 pounds. He's just 26 years old, or he will be 26 in July. Ended up only playing 7 games in the 2024 season. Dan Duggan did come out with the cap hits for his contract. It's going to be $12 million in the first year, $23 million in the second year, and then $19 million in 2027 in the third year. He led the NFL in forced incompletions over the past 2 seasons, and the Giants ranked 30th in passer rating allowed last season, allowing a passer rating of 103.1, and Paulson Adebo comes in allowing a passer rating of 61.6 over his last 2 seasons. So this is a cornerback that is absolutely going to upgrade this room. In 22 games over the last 2 seasons, Paulson Adebo has 29 forced incompletions. That's number 1 in the NFL. He's got 7 interceptions over the past 2 years. That's 4th in the NFL. Targeted 57 times in 2024. He allowed 34 receptions for 428 yards, just 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions, 7 PBUs, 381 snaps on the boundary in 7 games. He is a guy that is absolutely going to be out there on the boundary. Y'all know that we have Andrew Phillips, who has pretty much locked down the nickel position on this defense. So this just shores up another spot on this defense that we absolutely needed to address last year. And the reason why I like this move is it's another move where Joe Schoen is learning from his mistakes. If you look back to last season, we rolled into camp with Deonte Banks as our cornerback 1. And last minute, we went out there and we signed Adoree Jackson, really because we had no options. A lot of Giants fans were telling me at the time that the reason why we did that is because Adoree Jackson just didn't want to be at camp. And I vehemently disagreed with that, because why with a new defensive coordinator? Granted, Adoree Jackson had a little bit of experience with Shane Bowen in Tennessee, but Shane Bowen was part of the regime that got rid of Adoree Jackson. So bringing in a new defensive coordinator, I never thought it made sense for Adoree Jackson to be sitting out in camp. But Paulson Adebo has 10 interceptions in his career, 29 PBUs. I mean, this dude can definitely play the position. He's a ball hawk, a pretty good tackler. The one problem is the penalties, and Paulson Adebo is a little bit handsy. I described this on our show on Bleacher Report the other day. 9 penalties in 7 games in 2024, 35 penalties in 4 seasons. So we saw that kind of, starting to kind of, enter Deonte Banks' game a little bit last season with the pass interference calls and the holding penalties in clutch situations, and also some of the knucklehead play and just not being really dedicated to his team. Ended up having Deonte Banks on the bench for a couple of games, actually. But Paulson Adebo is a guy that's going to have to clean up some of those penalties. That is definitely a red flag on his tape. And the other thing that concerns me a little bit, and, seeing the way the contract came out, I kind of understand why it happened. Why the Saints wouldn't bring him back. Well, the Saints, we all know that the Saints are in cap hell, and they don't really have the dollars to allocate to a guy like this that's going to command this type of money. And I do think that, I love the signing, but I think we overpaid for Paulson Adebo. $18 million average annual value. He's the 13th highest paid cornerback in the NFL right now. But again, it's not my money, y'all. I don't care. Bring in the best players. I'm trying to be able to go out here and root for my team. Y'all know my co-host, The Beard, his Washington Commanders, and shout out to The Beard. He did have his baby over the last period of time that we had a stream. So big shout out to The Beard, man. Baby boy, healthy. I hope you at the crib, getting adjusted to the father life and whatnot. But being that he's a Commanders fan, I can't just be sitting up here next to my co-host with him, thinking about Super Bowl aspirations while my New York Giants are, basement dwellers in the NFC East. So I'm just happy to see us making these moves and bringing in players that are talented. And whether or not Joe Schoen will be here next year or not, it truly doesn't bother me one way or the other, the kind of money that is being spent. Just go out there and try to bring in the best players that you can possibly bring in so the New York Giants can go out here and win some football games. That's where I'm at with it. Now let's get off into this next signing, another one that I am extremely, extremely excited about. Just as excited as I am about Paulson Adebo, I'm just as excited about Jevon Holland. Jevon Holland is a very capable safety, and the theme of today's stream is going to be that Joe Schoen is learning from his mistakes, and I'm okay with that. I don't want to see a guy who can't put his mistakes behind him, and I know what you're thinking when you see this contract. You're thinking about Xavier McKinney, but Jevon Holland signed a 3-year, $45 million deal, $30 million of that guaranteed, an average annual value of $15 million. He's coming over from the Miami Dolphins. He just turned 25 years old. Solid build for the safety, 6'1", 210. He was a former second-round pick in 2021. I want to say his rookie year was one of his better years, I believe. But in his career, he's played 60 games, 57 starts, 9 TFLs, 301 total tackles, 10 QB hits, 5 forced fumbles. You got to love that because we got to get back into that, upper echelon category as far as takeaways go from our defense. We saw it with Wink Martindale. The Giants were at the top of the league in takeaways. And then when Shane Bowen comes here, I want to say we went, 7, 8, maybe 9 weeks before we got our second interception of the season. And the first one came from Darius Muasau. So you want to see the secondary going out there, forcing turnovers and making plays. Jevon Holland had 5 sacks, 25 PBUs, 5 interceptions in his career, but he had no interceptions in 2024 when he was playing through an injury. His career PFF coverage grade, and you could take this with a grain of salt. A lot of people don't like to rely on PFF, and I use PFF as just another opinion. It's somebody that looked at all the snaps and came to a determination. But his PFF coverage grade over his career is 91.3. That's 5th among all safeties since 2021. He missed 2 games in 2024 with a broken bone in his hand. He sprained both of his MCLs in Week 11 versus the Jets in 2023, and he missed 4 games. So this is a guy that, has dealt with some injuries in the past. And after those injuries in 2024, a lot of Miami Dolphins fans will tell you that there was a bit of a regression in his game. But the part that I like about it is he's powering through these injuries. To sprain 2 MCLs and only miss 4 games on the season, to have a broken bone in your hand and only miss 2 games in the 2024 season, I got to commend him for that. Now let's get to that elephant in the room, which is Xavier McKinney, because on social media, everybody was asking, why are we okay with this signing? Even when the news came out and I said I love this signing of Jevon Holland, a lot of people were like, why do you love this signing? I mean, we let Xavier McKinney walk, and everybody's just asking, why would you let Xavier McKinney walk and then turn around and pay a safety the following season? Xavier McKinney signed with the Green Bay Packers for a 4-year deal that's worth $67 million, and it has $23 million in guarantees, or $27 million in guarantees, which is really good. AAV of 16.7. Jevon Holland's contract is eerily similar to it. 3 years, $45 million, with a little bit more guaranteed money at $30.3 million guaranteed. But we're looking at 16.7 AAV versus 15.7 AAV. And like I told you guys, the theme of this stream is that Joe Schoen is learning from his mistakes. We've seen this with the offensive line. We've seen this with the depth on this roster, and that's going to be another point of address, a place where he will address, not only in free agency, but also in the draft. I don't want to see our GM. Granted, he's on a hot seat, and this might be his last year. I do not want to see our GM just going out here and just constantly making mistakes and also not being able to put those mistakes behind him. So he realized this past season that trying to draft a rookie and rolling with a guy who, I want to say Jason Pinnock, who now is a San Francisco 49er, I think Jason Pinnock was either a UDFA or he was drafted by the Jets, and when he was cut, the New York Giants ended up signing him in Joe Schoen's first year. So he saw the detriment that put his defense in by, one, removing your leader in Xavier McKinney, who was really entering, veteranship in the NFL. Learning from that, you bring in a guy like Jevon Holland after drafting Tyler Nubin. I like this move a lot. And now that the salary cap has boosted up, these numbers aren't quite the equivalent of what we saw from Xavier McKinney and what he got when he was entering his 2024 season with the Green Bay Packers. Great year with the Green Bay Packers. Xavier McKinney, y'all know I talked about it throughout the whole entire season about how terrible of a move that was from Joe Schoen. But at least he's learning from his mistakes. You see a guy on the market who, in my opinion, was the number 1 safety on the market in Jevon Holland, and you go out there and you make a move on him. I like this move. And again, you might say the money's kind of high for a guy like this who has been dealing with injuries and whatnot. But for me, I'm looking at it like this, y'all. It's not my bag. And I just want to see my team go out there and win games. 2 more signings I want to talk about, and then we'll quickly get off into the Giant overreactions. And this is another one that I was excited about as well. Chauncey Golston coming over from the Dallas Cowboys. I've seen some mixed reviews on this move, but I think that the people who don't like this move have not took at least a little bit of time to go out there and look at Chauncey Golston's tape. He signed a 3-year, $19.5 million deal with an average annual value of $6.5 million, 6'5", 270. And what I love about this signing is he is not the same archetype of the guys we have on the outside right now. That's 1. 2, he's extremely versatile. He's a guy that can play defensive end. You could possibly move him to the outside linebacker position in this 3-4 defense. He has experience playing some defensive tackle as well with the Dallas Cowboys when Dan Quinn was with the Cowboys. So I love this move. The timeline fits what the New York Giants are doing right now. He's just 27 years old, entering his 5th season, spent his rookie contract with the Dallas Cowboys. He was selected in the 3rd round of the 2021 NFL Draft. He played a ton more snaps at defensive tackle with Dan Quinn in 2022 and 2023. And this really, really is something that I really like about him. He missed just 2 games in his career to injury. So y'all know that we need dogs in the building. His career stats over 4 seasons, 91 total pressures, 11 sacks, 73 quarterback hurries, 5 batted passes at the line. 3 of them came this past season, too. A missed tackle rate of 13.1%, 65 run stops in his 4 seasons, 30 of them coming in 2024. Those kind of numbers are what we need on this defense. Even when Wink Martindale was here, the Giants struggled to stop the run. With Shane Bowen, it kind of got worse. And even though we have Dexter Lawrence in the middle of this defense, we need some more dogs to go next to Dexter Lawrence that could help him out when he's getting double teamed. The Washington game last season, the first game, the one that I was at, is one that eerily reminds me of how if a team can just come out there and double team Dexter Lawrence, you can run right down the teeth of this New York Giants defense. So bringing in a guy like Chauncey Golston is absolutely going to help us out. In 2024, he had 5.5 sacks, 37 pressures. He did a lot of his damage last season. 7 quarterback hits, 28 quarterback hurries, the 30 run stops we talked about, 3 batted passes that we talked about at the line, a run stop rate of 6.8%, which was 21st in the NFL. His skill set that he brings to the table is something that I'm definitely looking forward to seeing how it pans out on the field with the New York Giants. He's all about power. He does not do no finesse. He's not about that Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau stuff. He is a bull rush type of player. And when he gets after the quarterback, he earns what he works for. All the sacks that he has gotten on quarterbacks in this past season, all 5.5 of them, if you need to check them out, Justin Pennock from, or Justin Pennick, I want to say Penix, maybe Justin Penix from Talking Giants, he put out a compilation of all the sacks from this past season, and there's nothing easy. He's working for every one of them. He's throwing somebody out the way. He's a ferocious pass rusher that plays with a lot of tenacity, a lot of grit. He's a dog. I'm confident in saying that right now, and anybody who's telling you otherwise, I don't think they've looked at the tape. It's all about how he's going to fit within this Shane Bowen defense. I think that's the main thing. It's like Shane Bowen is a guy that relies on getting pressure with the front four, and I do think that he is a guy that fits that mold. And Shane is probably going to try to do some adjustments in this next season and maybe try to get away from the identity that he has had over the years, especially coming from Tennessee. Y'all know I put you guys on to the creeper blitz, a lot of the stuff that he was doing with the fire zones and the Dick LeBeau style type of stuff where you're sending blitzes from the secondary and from the second level and taking a defensive lineman and dropping them back into coverage. Those are the type of things that I think he's going to have to make some adjustments. And we'll see if we can get a little bit more balance out of this defense going into 2025. I hope. I think that Chauncey Golston is a really good read and react type of player. He's the kind of guy that keeps his eyes in the backfield, diagnoses plays early, and then he just tries to get after the ball. Those are the kind of players that the New York Giants need. And we lack depth. If we can make more signings like this, finding players out there that are, maybe guys that are kind of flying a little bit under the radar, and I'm sure that Chauncey Golston is a guy that flew under your radar. I mean, even being a guy who covers him within the NFC East, he was definitely under the radar for me, but I had to go and just take a look at the tape, and when you look at the tape, kind of reminds me of Randy Gregory in his older years when he was with the Dallas Cowboys. So bringing in a piece like that, I'm all for it. The Giants need depth up front. That was a big issue last season, and you're seeing Joe Schoen go out there and, again, learn from his mistakes and make the proper adjustments. The last signing that I want to talk about here is the Darius Slayton move. And a lot of people are having mixed reviews about this Darius Slayton move as well. And for me, y'all know I'm a supporter of Darius Slayton. I like him. As I said on Bleach Report, he was born a New York Giant. He is the perfect kind of teammate. I call Darius Slayton all reliable because when everything was, hitting the fan and everything was going wrong in our wide receiver room over all of the years that Darius Slayton has been here, from the Kadarius Toney and the Kenny Galladay, from the Golden Tate era when he was suspended, all the way here into when we drafted Wan'Dale Robinson and when Darius Slayton was thrown into the doghouse by Brian Daboll and really didn't get a chance to start in the 2022 season until the season kind of progressed along. And then when Wan'Dale Robinson goes down with an injury, Darius Slayton is right there. But my reaction to this signing was not all that great. The money that we are paying Darius Slayton, I thought was, for the position that the New York Giants are in. I don't know how much in favor I am of this deal. 3 years, $36 million. I forget the guarantees, but nonetheless, you're paying this guy pretty much the amount of money that you would have paid Saquon Barkley. That's not the part that bothers me. Saquon Barkley is a Philadelphia Eagle. Go do your thing. He led them to a Super Bowl victory. I'm rooting for Saquon. A lot of Giants fans weren't, but I'm rooting for Saquon as long as it's not going up against my New York Giants. And in the past, it really has not mattered. The Philadelphia Eagles have pretty much owned us, and we haven't even been able to beat the Philadelphia Eagles since 2013 in Philly. So, none of that bothers me. The New York Giants have not been in contention for a long time. So it's not the Saquon part. For me, it's about spending draft capital on wide receivers every year that you have been here, from the Joe Schoen perspective as the general manager. Drafting Wan'Dale Robinson in 2022, trading up to draft Jalen Hyatt in 2023, and spending the 6th overall pick on Malik Nabers in 2024, which I'm all for that. That's cool. I wanted a quarterback in 2024 in Michael Penix at 6. We didn't pull the trigger. We went with a weapon that was more of a guarantee at that position, and I'm okay with that. Now we have a premier wide receiver 1 that we can move forward with. And going into this draft, that gives you a lot of different options. But we are wasting Jalen Hyatt right now. And I don't know how the front office, really views a guy like Jalen Hyatt right now. But I think that Jalen Hyatt has a pretty good skill set that has not been able to find a way to be tapped into with the New York Giants. And we have struggled developing personnel over the years. Jalen Hyatt is not some slouch. This is a dude that was a former Biletnikoff winner and did some damage at Tennessee. He's a guy that we know can stretch the field, and we saw that with Tyrod Taylor at the quarterback position, but neither Drew Lock, neither Tommy DeVito, nor Daniel Jones, who just signed a $14 million deal with the Indianapolis Colts. Shout out to my dog Stan one time. I know he's in hell right now. But at the end of the day, these quarterbacks have not been able to tap into that promising type of skill set that a guy like Jalen Hyatt has. And y'all know that when we first drafted Jalen Hyatt, I looked at him as a guy that could possibly eventually be a wide receiver 1 if they could, kind of refine his route tree and, get him to do some of the things better that aren't at the top of his game, some of the intermediate stuff, getting in and out of your breaks on some of the shorter routes, running some different concepts, being able to go across the middle, not only being able to stretch the field, and they have yet to be able to do that. Now, Slayton, I thought also deserves to go to a contender. The Giants right now, especially with, the big question mark at the quarterback position, we're not a contender currently right now. I think the right quarterback can make this team, you could put this team in the mix, but they're not going to be a team that's contending for a trophy. And I know a lot of people have different mixed opinions on what competing and what contending is. I actually got into a bit of a debate with a Washington Commander fan about this just recently, who was telling me that the Washington Commanders were competing in 2016 and in 2020 simply because they were a team that was on the cusp or making the playoffs. If you don't forget, the Washington Commanders made the playoffs in 2020 with a 7-9 record. To me, that's not competing, right? And even in 2016, when you look at a team like that won 7 games, I don't care what kind of numbers Kirk Cousins was putting up, that's not competing. So the Giants, to me, are not in that position. I wanted a fresh restart. I wanted new weapons, new blood here in the New York Giants wide receiver core. And it has been a problem. This offense has been a bottom-ranked offense since Brian Daboll pretty much got here, a bottom third offense. And now you're taking opportunities away from some of the younger talent that we have on this roster. As I look at my top draft board over here, if the Giants were to be able to bring in one of these guys that I'm infatuated with as far as their productivity on the football field on a collegiate level, if they were to fall into the second round, a Jaden Higgins out of Iowa State, a Trey Harris out of Ole Miss, even if you were to get a guy like a Jalen Royals out of Utah State or Jack Besh out of TCU, or some guys maybe in the later rounds that might fall to the third round, a guy like Xavier Restrepo. Big fan of Ricky White III out of UNLV, who could play the outside and come to the inside and maybe play some of the slot. If you do draft one of these guys, by having a guy like Darius Slayton on the roster, you're taking away from their opportunities. You already have Malik Nabers, who's obviously going to be on the field for about, 90 to 100% of the snaps for this offense. A guy that I would also like to see get shifted into the slot and take away some snaps from Wan'Dale Robinson as well, because of some of the damage that Malik Nabers was able to do in college with Jaden Daniels at LSU. I think we're kind of misusing Malik Nabers a little bit by just keeping him on the outside. The slot fade was his number one route. The other thing, the biggest thing for me about why this Darius Slayton contract is a little bit interesting, Slayton is coming off his worst season with the New York Giants. And I think this is something that kind of flew under the radar. He started in 13 games, but he played in pretty much every game. 71 targets was the 4th lowest of his career. He had 39 receptions, which is the 2nd worst of his career. And only in 2021 did he have less receptions than that. But that was because he only played about 60% of the snaps that year. He had 573 yards, a career low, 2 touchdowns, a career low, and he averaged 14.7 yards per reception. That's another career low. So when a guy goes out there, and I do understand that the quarterback play was absolutely pathetic last year, but when a guy goes out there and he puts out his worst season as a New York Giant since he's been here since 2019, you reward him by giving him a contract? I really don't understand it. I would have loved to see Darius Slayton go to another team for the benefit of him and for the New York Giants to just be able to get a little bit of fresh blood out there. Now, people are going to ask, well, what were the other options that we could have brought in for a wide receiver at that type of price at around $12 million AAV? Now, money-wise, I don't know. And like I said, the theme of this stream is Joe Schoen putting his mistakes behind him, and also about John Mara's money. I don't care about it. But there are guys out there on the market. Cooper Kupp was out there. Amari Cooper was out there. Deontay Johnson is still out there. And whether you think he's a better wide receiver than Darius Slayton, that's a discussion that could be had and an argument that could be made. But he would have been cheaper for sure. A veteran like Keenan Allen, Stephon Diggs, these are all viable options that the New York Giants could have considered bringing in. Now, Stephon Diggs, you got to take it with a grain of salt that he's not going to be the same perfect type of teammate that a guy like Darius Slayton is. They might come with a little bit of a sideshow here, a little bit of, Cardi B type of vibes and a little bit of off-the-field stuff. But nonetheless, even though he's coming off a knee injury, I think he's a much better option at the wide receiver position than a guy like Darius Slayton. There's also some good depth out there. And like I said, I would have addressed wide receiver in the draft as well. There's some great talent. I got like 40 wide receivers on my board over here. There's great talent there. But there's also depth still available in free agency as well. And a guy that I would have loved to bring in would have been Nick Westbrook-Akine from the Tennessee Titans. He's a guy that is not going to have a high price tag, and he put up some awesome numbers last year. 32 receptions. He had 497 yards, which is just under 100 yards less than Darius Slayton, but he had way less targets. And the big number, the New York Giants need guys that are going to be able to score touchdowns. And Nick Westbrook-Akine scored 9 touchdowns last year on 32 receptions. We're talking about a guy that a third of his receptions are ending up in the end zone. 15.5 yards per reception. He's a guy I would love to bring in. But that's not to say that he would have been a better option than Darius Slayton. I'm absolutely not saying that. But I do think that there are just other avenues that the New York Giants could have explored to upgrade this wide receiver room and just give us a fresh start, man. Like, I just want a little bit of hope for this team. And I think that when you just redundantly bring back the same personnel and the same talent, and when you look at the offensive side of the ball, granted, there have been some great moves that the Giants have made here in free agency on the defensive side of the ball. But when you look at the offense, it's the exact same offense. So I know a lot of people are saying, plug in a quarterback, it's going to help, and it absolutely will. But at the end of the day, we got to find a way to upgrade these skill positions on the offensive side of the ball if we want any chance at winning games in 2025. So still a lot of work to do. I like the signings. I'm not mad at the Darius Slayton signing. It's not a ton of money, but I do think we could have explored a couple of different options. But Darius Slayton is a guy that even Malik Neighbors said it. They relied on him for his veteranship. He was cutting up clips of all the cornerbacks that they were going to be facing that year and doing the veteran work and putting in the extra hours. He's what you want out of a teammate. He is the mold of a teammate. And a lot of my homies that we talk ball with on Twitter, Darius Slayton's kind of guy that gets on their nerves because he's just like, overly a homer for his own team. But I get it, man. That's how you got to be while you're with that particular ball club. In this case, it's the New York Giants. And until he's not a New York Giant, I think it's a good thing that he plays it that way. Let me just tap in with the chat real quick one time. I do see we got a super chat here from the homie Elias Wiskovich. Big shout out to Elias Wiskovich in the building. I hope I enunciated that the proper way with the $4.99 super chat. He says, I don't know about you, but if we sign a guy like Russell Wilson and go up to grab Cam Ward, going to have to lay off of Joe Schoen. He cooked out here. I mean, if he can do that, that would be the perfect offseason for the New York Giants. I think he did a good job. The two signings that stand out are in the secondary as far as free agency goes. But yeah, like I said, man, I don't hold the old opinions and the old moves that Joe Schoen did and my old opinions on him going into this year. It's a fresh year. And granted, this might be his last year here with the New York Giants, but I'm not going to sit up here and root against Joe Schoen. I don't think that's good for the team, and I don't think that's going to produce good content for you guys either. If it's a good move, it's a good move. Jevon Holland is a good move. Paulson Adebo is a good move. Chauncey Golston is a good move. Bringing in depth on the offensive line, those are good moves. Now you've done this on the defense, and if you look back at how they operated in Buffalo, the way that they drafted, the free agent signings, the trades that they made, there was a lot of good on the defensive side of the ball when Joe Schoen was over there. It was on the offensive side of the ball outside of Josh Allen where they struggled. Couldn't really draft really good wide receivers. They had Gabe Davis over there for a little bit, but everything that they did on the offensive side of the ball was bringing in players that were, at a previous destination and really relying on one of the greatest quarterbacks that is playing the game right now. So I'm right there with you, Elias. I definitely agree with you on that. If he can go out there and trade up for Cam Ward, I think that's going to be awesome. I think you are kind of, I don't know if you're sitting backstage here on StreamYard and you can see my giant overreactions, but we're absolutely going to get to that when we talk about some of these giant overreactions as well. Big shout out to my dog Talking Eco one time in the building with the $4.99 super chat. He says, I think the Slayton signing is Joe Schoen acknowledging locker room leadership is important after the Barkley and McKinney mistakes from last year. Yep. And like I said, you're learning from those mistakes. And Joe Schoen is a guy that I think is learning on the job. I even had a graphic prepared for it from when we were talking about this on a Bleacher Report that is what Joe Schoen is doing. He has had a solid start to the free agency, but it does seem like a GM who is learning on the job. You just hope that he can learn fast enough and that by the time we get to the 2025 season, the product that he is putting out there on the field is something that will maybe lean towards Joe Schoen keeping his job and building a little bit of continuity moving forward with the New York Giants. So I like it. I love the moves. These are fantastic moves. And when you look at them all in a vacuum, and then you can kind of just assess what the roster looks like currently right now after all of these moves, this is a massive upgrade here. I don't have the graphic handy right now with the way that the roster looked going into free agency. But man, this way, let me get over it. Look at that right there. That, as far as a starting lineup goes, that looks really good. Dexter Lawrence sitting at the defensive tackle. Now you bring in Chauncey Golston. Raheem Nunez-Roches is probably the weakest part of this unit. Brian Burns on the outside, Kayvon Thibodeau, Micah McFadden, Bobby Okereke, Tyler Nubin, who's probably another weaker piece on this defense, but he's a young piece, so I'm willing to see him grow with this team. Jevon Holland at the free safety position, Deonte Banks and Paulson Adebo on the outside. This is a great young unit. And I want to say, none of these players are really aging. The timeline aligns. So I'm all for this. This is great work by the New York Giants, and I'm happy about the way that this roster looks as far as on the defensive side of the ball. But where Joe Schoen can't get a little bit too excited like the fans are right now is the depth is just as important. If one of these guys goes down with an injury, you better have somebody that can come in, a viable option that can come in and be a real starter for this team. If Dexter Lawrence goes down, that's going to kill us. If Brian Burns goes down, that's going to kill us right now. At the interior portion of the linebacker core, we cannot afford to have Micah McFadden or Bobby Okereke go down with an injury. That unit will take a drastic fall if that does happen. And the safeties as well. Jevon Holland has to stay healthy, a guy that has dealt with injuries in the past couple of seasons. So that's something to monitor. That's something to keep your eyes on. But Joe Schoen, big props to Joe Schoen. I think he's doing a really good job so far. And I felt like this last year a little bit. Going into free agency last year, the roster was looking, the cupboard was looking a bit bare last year. Losing Xavier McKinney, losing Saquon Barkley, losing Leonard Williams earlier in the season to the Seattle Seahawks via trade. There was a lot of things that needed to be ironed out. You can't forget about Darren Waller to retirement as well. So, Joe Schoen went out there, and during the offseason, a lot of fans were feeling that hype and feeling pretty good about it. So right now, I give him his props on the moves, but what's on paper is not what's on the field. And we got to remember that once these guys get on the field, the productivity has to happen. And Joe Schoen put pen to paper. Now we got to be able to put that same productivity out on the field and see how things go. So I'm loving it. It's really good. And going into the draft, things are looking really good for the Giants outside of winning that game against the Colts and, really messing up our options at having the number one pick. Could you imagine if we lost to the Colts and we were sitting at the number one overall selection in the 2025 draft with this current defensive unit here being the starters? I mean, I would be feeling fantastic knowing that Cam Ward was about to be the quarterback for the New York Giants. So nonetheless, great moves. Loving it so far from Joe Schoen. I'm not going to be one of these guys on Twitter talking about Joe Schoen masterclass and, posting a gif of him walking out the truck and all that bullshit. I don't do that. You know what I'm saying? I'll wait till these moves really start to pan out. And once we get out there on the field, we'll see how things go. But great. Got to give him a, couple of stars for his work thus far in free agency. And it's good to be on the end of teams that are moving and doing things, teams that are being active and bringing in good signings that are going to pay dividends for the New York Giants moving forward. Big shout out to everybody in the chat, man. I haven't been able to tap in with y'all. I wanted to keep this stream at about or under an hour, so that the audience that's going to be watching this on the replay can be able to, digest some of this content in a bit of a faster fashion. So we're going to try to keep this under an hour. I already see Big Blue Steph Forever said Jaden Higgins with the exclamation marks. Yeah, if Jaden Higgins falls to the second round, you have to alter the way that you're approaching the draft, because I'm looking at the second round pick being a defensive tackle. But if Jaden Higgins is there, if Trey Harris from Ole Miss is there, it's going to change some things up a little bit. Or who knows, maybe a guy like Matthew Golden could fall out of the first round, because Matthew Golden is getting a lot of hype right now. But I just think that when I look at the tape, and I've done a deep dive on the tape of Matthew Golden, it just, to me, doesn't scream first-round wide receiver just yet. But the best route runner in this class, hands down, bar none, is definitely Matthew Golden. I'm a big fan of his game out of Texas, and ran a nice little 40 there, and he's rising up draft boards right now. So I do expect him to go in the first round. Whether he's a first-round talent or not, yet to be decided. But love Jaden Higgins. I love Jalen Noel, the other wide receiver from Iowa State as well. He's a guy that'll probably fall to day 2 as well. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what he can do. But while we here, shout out Derek Grant. I see Derek Grant in the building. He said, "Good morning, bro. I'm sorry, but Joe ain't it, because we still don't have a quarterback this late in free. It's not late. We're 2 days into free agency. And I know it feels like that because, all these quarterbacks are going off the board. But I'll ask you this, Derek Grant, and I'll try to keep an eye on it. If you had your hand-picked selection at the free agent quarterbacks this year, who would you have gotten? Would it have been Sam Darnold and paid that contract? Would it have been Aaron Rodgers or Justin Fields? Who would you have went with? Because I feel like this was a weaker free agency market for the quarterback position. For me, the big thing was missing out on that first pick and not being able to get Cam Ward without having to trade up. Yeah, Ben Ayers says it's Jalen Noel. Oh, you said Noel. No, I think it's Noel. I think you're wrong on that. Yeah, I think you're wrong on that, Ben. I think or maybe you're just correcting yourself and laughing at it. Yeah, it's definitely Jalen Noel. Because I remember when I was first looking him up, I thought it was Noel as well, but it's Noel. Great player. Love his game. But yeah, I'm not sitting up here saying like, Joe Schoen is a great GM because he had one nice free agency period the first couple of days. Definitely not saying that. The mistakes are the mistakes. And when judging the general manager, from a, let me use a photography reference here, but if we were to use like a super wide lens, about 12 millimeters, and we looked at it from the wide angle view, Joe Schoen has been garbage. But if you kind of go into a telephoto type of view, or maybe we get into a macro type of view and we look at things, in a close type of landscape here, yeah, Joe Schoen is doing a good job the last couple of days here. I mean, how much better could he have done the last couple of days outside of just getting us a quarterback? I think that could have been a thing. But let's get off into these giant overreactions. I'm excited about them. We got 3 giant overreactions to go over today. And again, for those of y'all that don't know, if the statement comes up on the screen and you think that the person who said that statement is absolutely overreacting and you don't agree with it, put an O in the chat to represent that you are taking the overreaction. If you agree with the statement on the screen, then you can put a U in the chat to represent that you are taking the under and you do agree with what the person is saying on the screen. If you think you need a little bit of more time, maybe until we get to the draft or until we get to the regular season to really assess the statement on the screen, then you can put a P in the chat to represent that you are taking the push indeed. So let's get right into it and get into the first giant overreaction. Let me kind of double check where we were at with it as far as the overreactions. Oh, I like this first one. This first one's going to be a real good one. Let's get right to it. So this one comes from CW, the man, the myth, also known as C-Web on Twitter, all about the trenches. Shout out to C-Web one time in the trenches. Y'all know what it is, man. He says, if Joe Schoen and company are not convinced on a quarterback, then roll out Tommy DeVito and wait until 2026. That is a very, very hot take, if you ask me. And this is how I view it. I view it like this. Tommy DeVito we know the story. He's not really a good quarterback. Pressure to sack percentage of 30% this last season, sacked 6 times on 55 dropbacks, which is a 10.9% of ratio of being sacked on your dropbacks. We're talking about a sack every 10 dropbacks. 5.8 yards per attempt. I'm sick of that. I don't want to see Tommy DeVito going out there trying to do his best impersonation of Daniel Jones. He's been 7 of 16 on passes over 20 yards, which is not too terrible. But again, we know this story when it comes to Tommy DeVito, and Tommy DeVito at this particular time is not a good quarterback. Shout out to my homie Pat. He just had a birthday on February 25th. He is the reason why I am a New York Giants fan. And while we were sitting at the bar, there was some dude that was sitting at the bar chopping it up with us who was a fan of Illinois University. And he talked about how Tommy DeVito was this polarizing figure when he was there in college, and he talked about how much love he has for Tommy DeVito. Now, that is on the collegiate side of things. When we're talking about the professional side of things, I cannot side with this take about Tommy DeVito. There are plenty of other options out there. And we talking draft, we talking free agency. We can start with the draft. I don't know if you guys got a chance to see my quarterback rankings on Twitter. They are not your typical quarterback rankings that everybody has, either Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward at QB1, and then the other one at QB2. For me, it is Cam Ward at quarterback 1 with a large gap between him and the other quarterbacks. Quarterback 2 for me is absolutely Jackson Dart right now. I think that he does a lot of the same things that Shedeur Sanders does, but when I look at the intangibles and the skill set and the build and the way that he provides a skill set of mobility to be able to come in here and run some read option, run some boots, run some design quarterback runs like they did with him at Ole Miss. I have him over Shedeur Sanders. I saw a clip come out today about Shedeur Sanders, and it came from Ryan Clark on ESPN, who was saying, and he did not say definitively. I like when an analyst uses their words properly, but he said there is like that possible case that some general managers or some organizations are looking at a quarterback and the color of their skin could be a reason why they might pass on a guy. I'm here to say that everything that surrounds Shedeur Sanders, in my opinion, has nothing to do with race, and it has everything to do with what is on the tape with Shedeur Sanders. Now, what you might see with some of that bullshit that you see on Twitter, I'm not ruling that stuff out, because we all know that not only within the New York Giants fan base, but within the NFL community, or just within the human race period, especially from a perspective in America, that racism does still exist. But in this particular case, I think that people who have a valuable opinion, because I think that anybody who's shitting on Shedeur Sanders because of his race is just a straight up fucking bozo, and I don't pay that stuff any mind. That's a quick way for you to get blocked and be on that list of my blocked candidates on my Twitter page, which is it's getting really high, y'all. It's about good 500 motherfuckers blocked on my Twitter page. So, that's a sure way to get there. But for me, in this particular case with Shedeur Sanders, it's not about race. It's about play. It's about the all-22 tape that he has put out on the field. It's about deficiencies in his game. And more importantly, I do think that it is because Deion Sanders is his father. And people have a certain opinion about Deion Sanders, the same way that people have an opinion about Aaron Rodgers and why they don't want Aaron Rodgers and the whole sideshow that comes with Aaron Rodgers to be a part of what we are doing over here with the New York Giants. So for me, Shedeur Sanders is quarterback 3 on my list. And I got guys like Jalen Milroe's definitely a guy that's in my top 5 right now, because you cannot ignore the type of physical, characteristics and traits that he has in his game. He is without a doubt the best runner of all the quarterbacks in this class. He's got a big arm. He can throw the ball and push the ball down the field for sure. You got to clean up some of those things like the mechanics, lower and upper half, obviously. The throwing motion is not quite what you want to see out of an NFL quarterback. But those are all deficiencies that I think can be ironed out in the NFL when you bring a guy like Jalen Milroe into the league and you get him around a professional NFL coach that's going to help fix some of those base mechanics, like we saw what happened with Jalen Hurts with the Philadelphia Eagles. If after the Super Bowl win with Jalen Hurts, you are not convinced that he is one of the better quarterbacks in this league, you're not watching football with the right lens. I can absolutely definitively say that, because Jalen Hurts, if you look at him from his rookie year or from his second year when he became the starter, the way that he has cleaned up the base of his mechanics is a reason why he has become a more accurate passer late in his career now. We're talking about a quarterback that has 2 Super Bowl appearances in the last, 3 to 4 seasons. You can talk about what is around him all you want to. When it came down to the big moments in that game, Jalen Hurts went out there and made plays. And the play that comes to mind is when he put the nail in the coffin on the Kansas City Chiefs with the deep streaking route down the middle of the field to Devonta Smith with a perfect, absolute dart that landed right in the bucket that really put that game, really closed the coffin on them. And he still wanted to play. I love the leadership from a guy like that. And Jalen Milroe possesses some of those same skill sets. A lot of people talk about his character, and I think that he's a guy that could come in and have success in the league, but he's just not a day one starter. So you got to find a way to address quarterback in free agency if you're not going to roll with Tommy DeVito. You could also trade for a couple of guys out there. They're talking about Joe Milton as a quarterback that possibly could be a candidate, that's on the trade block for the New England Patriots. And I'm not extremely interested in that move, but it's a better option than rolling out Tommy DeVito at the quarterback position. There's also guys like Hendon Hooker. And at the bridge, quarterback position here, Russell Wilson, if things go the way that we envision where Aaron Rodgers ends up with the Pittsburgh Steelers, that'll leave Russell Wilson without a home. We already saw Daniel Jones go to the Colts. We saw Sam Darnold go to the Seahawks. We saw Geno Smith go to the Raiders. There's not many quarterbacks. There are not many teams that need a quarterback right now outside of the New York Giants and the Cleveland Browns. And the Cleveland Browns made a trade for Kenny Pickett just recently with the Philadelphia Eagles. But that's not a true move at a quarterback that's going to be a starter. So for me, Russell Wilson could be an option. If it's not Russell Wilson, go out there. Marcus Mariota said that he wants to be a starter in this league. Marcus Mariota is 1,000% a better option than Tommy DeVito is. Let me just tap in with the chat real quick, see how you guys are feeling about it. I'll scroll back about a good 15 and just see where we're looking at. Okay, yeah, bunch of overreactions. I definitely agree with it. I don't think anybody's going to look at this as a real viable option right now. And he went on to say that you could just wait until, 2026. And I still think that doesn't cover up how poor of a take this is. But shout out to C-Web. I'm not up here trying to tell anybody how to fan. Everybody should have their own opinions, and we should be able to share them like that. But I do see everybody kind of looking at this one as an overreaction. Shout out to my dog, Pal 11 in the building, been representing for us over there on Bleacher Report. He got a chance to get an early nod at a lot of the discussion that is being had on this stream. Big shout out to Pal one time, man. He's been representing, holding us down. Talking Eco said, it's an overreaction. If this happens, Shane and Dable won't be drafting the next quarterback. That's a fact. Enrique says, are y'all willing to give up whatever to move up to 1? I'm willing to give up next year's 1, but we're going to talk about that a little bit here in a second. Ben Harris says it's an overreaction. Joe Shane is desperate for wins. Shout out to Deedon in the building one time. What's going on, my dog? He said this defense is too good to disrespect it with Tommy DeVito. I totally agree. John B said absolutely not. Gregory said, overreaction. It's time now to find a quarterback to build around. That's just kicking the can down the street, not even down the road, maybe just down a half a block right there. I definitely feel you on that. Old man Rob said, let's go get Dart, baby. If it's in the second round, I forgot to say that about the quarterbacks. When I'm doing my rankings here, the only first-round grade I have is Cam Ward. All the other quarterbacks are second-round grades for me or below. And we're going to talk about a bit of a sleeper quarterback here in a second coming into the draft as well. Let's see. Jaji05, man, another one that been holding me down on Bleach Report, man. Big shout out to my dog, Jaji05. He said, not much of a difference between Tommy DeVito and Danny. Bro, it's time to move on. Absolutely. I agree with all these takes y'all are putting out there. Simeon said, why are we the DeVito welfare program? That's crazy right there. Shout out to Michael Knight is in the building, said, that's who I want if Ward is not available. I'm not too sure who he's talking about. He might be talking about Jackson Dart. For me, it's Cam Ward. I would love to get Cam Ward a quarterback 1, but I would settle for Shedeur Sanders or Jackson Dart. Even if they drafted Jackson Dart or Ward or Shedeur Sanders at 3, it would be strange. I ain't gonna lie. I'd be like, damn, we're spending that kind of capital on a guy, that high in the draft. But being that they would just solidify a quarterback coming out this draft, I could deal with it. But it's definitely not one of my, top preferences for sure. Let's see. So Will Hooper says, so you like Dart in the second round and Hunter in the first? Absolutely. And if one of the other teams were to go with Travis Hunter, I'd be totally cool with taking Abdul Carter or one of the other premier talents. I know taking Mason Graham there seems a little bit high, but bringing in Mason Graham and putting him next to Dexter Lawrence could make this defense that much more of a threat as well. But I would love to, my initial options when I was first talking about draft stuff on Bleacher Report was if Travis Hunter's not there, would be to trade back and then possibly try to stay within the top 10, top 15 and draft, an offensive weapon like, a Tetairoa McMillan out of Arizona, who, in my opinion, is one of the best wide receivers in this draft and could come in and really make this offense move. I mean, imagine Tetairoa McMillan and Malik Neighbors on the outside. That would be absolutely deadly. Powell says, I have a feeling Tennessee is going to ask for the 3rd pick, the 34th pick, then the 2026 first, and the 2026 third for the first pick. I would not do that. Giants had a decent offseason, but we're not one piece away. We aren't. And when you do that, that would not be to draft that quarterback that would be one piece away simply for this particular 2025 season. It would be for the future. And you could still continue to build this team through the draft and through the next couple of off seasons in free agency. But I'm not mad at you, not wanting to give up that much We're going to talk about it. Marquez Valdez-Scantling is signing with the Seattle Seahawks on a deal worth up to $5.5 million. That doesn't move the needle for them at all, but they do need some help after losing DK Metcalf. Let me see. Chaz G says Shador had a terrible offensive line. I give him a pass on his mistakes last year, and the offense was trash too. Shout out to Pat Shermer. So a couple of things about this here. So the offense, the designs, the route designs were not all that good with Colorado last year. And definitely they did put Shador Sanders in harm's way with that poorly built offensive line. And their tight end was absolutely terrible in pass protection as well. You know, I do understand that. But there are times all too often where you see Shador Sanders drifting in the pocket and not helping out his offensive line as well. Y'all know I always tell y'all, man, a decisive quarterback is an offensive lineman's best friend. And Shador Sanders can be decisive, but it's all about the consistency. The things that worry me, too, is the NFL arm. Does he have enough velocity and enough power and enough arm strength to be able to come into the league and be a guy that can make those throws in tight windows that we saw sometimes at Colorado this past year? But to me, there's not a big difference in his tape from what we see from him and what we see from Jackson Dart. And I think that Jackson Dart just gets the ball out a little bit faster. You know, when you look at some of the quick concepts that they ran at Ole Miss and you look at some of the quick concepts that they ran at Colorado and you compare them, which both of them ran a ton of them, Shador Sanders has so many throws that are at or behind the line of scrimmage along with Jackson Dart. With Jackson Dart, they ran a lot of bubble screens and things like that to be able to set up the big passes over the top, you know, the design deep shots. But he just gets the ball out much faster than Shador Sanders does. Shador needs the base to be able to make the right throws. So that means that you're going to have a really good offensive line in front of him. I think Shador Sanders is the type of quarterback that would benefit more from going to an ideal situation with a team maybe drafted later in the first round, like the Pittsburgh Steelers maybe, you know, so that when he does get the opportunity to play, he's playing in front of a better, you know, just a less poorly built offensive line and all the other surroundings around him as well, especially wide receiver as well. But I like Shador. Don't get me wrong. A lot of people take my takes on Shador not being QB1 or 2 as, oh, you don't like Shador. I really do like Shador Sanders. It's just not as a first-round grade right now. And if he's going to be drafted at 3, I would much prefer to get Jackson Dart in the second round than drafting Shador Sanders at 2 because you could double up. You bring in Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter or any, you know, top-of-the-draft type of prospect that you would want to bring in and still be able to get your quarterback in the second round. Michael Knight says, my question for you, Authentic, is do we take Jackson Dart at number 3? Look, I'm not in the front office. I don't know what they're going to do. If it was me, it'd be a strong fuck no. Like, absolutely not am I taking Jackson Dart at 3. What scenario would there be where we would want to take Jackson Dart at 3? Cam Ward and Shador Sanders go off the board 1 and 2, or Cam Ward and Travis Hunter maybe go off the board 1 and 2, and we're sitting up there, you know, thinking like, what do we, Shador or Jackson Dart? There's no scenario in my mind that would, you know, yield us drafting Jackson Dart at 3. I wouldn't do it. Shout out to my dog, the Illa, man, in the building. Make sure y'all go subscribe to the Illa. He said, all I ever said was Shador wasn't his dad. He's a good player, but nowhere near the player his dad was coming out of FSU. Deion could say whatever he wanted. Deion could say whatever he wanted to because people know or knew he was that dude. Sorry for not highlighting that comment on the screen. It's a great point. Like, you know, a lot of people are looking at Shador Sanders and they think, oh, you know, this guy's too brash, he's too confident and all that. And there is some of that comes with that. Like, your play has to back up what you are saying when you get in front of the media, when you get in front of some of these teams. But at the end of the day, for me, that doesn't bother me. You know, I want my quarterback to be confident. And, you know, some people are not going to like that, especially in the New York market where it's a little bit, you know, more reserved, more blue collar. But if Shador Sanders can go out there and just be the prospect that he thinks he is in his mind, I'm cool with him being a New York Giant by all means. Ben Ayers says that Jalen Hurts is always playing with the lead, so it's almost hard to evaluate fully. He's a good game manager. At least if Hurts was on the Giants, I'm not sure he could rally them. I mean, look at the way that Jalen Hurts played in his second season when he became the starter. They had scraps over there, bro. And he won 9 games. It was Greg Ward at wide receiver. It was, what's my dude's name? Travis something with an F. And then it was Devonta Smith as a rookie. It was Miles Sanders in the backfield. The offensive line was definitely still good, but he still found ways to be able to use his legs and to be able to rally his team and win a couple of games. So I think Jalen Hurts is the kind of quarterback that gives you a floor of like 7 wins no matter what's going on around him. I think he's a really good quarterback. But had he have been with the New York Giants, the development would have not went, on the same type of trajectory. He was in a great situation. The only knock on what happened, with the surroundings in Philadelphia was that the offensive coordinator has changed every year. And Jalen Hurts is going to go into 2025 with now, again, another offensive coordinator. I think it's 9 offensive coordinators since he left high school, 9 different offensive coordinators. So, that's the only thing. Outside of that, they've built great stability around him. Great offensive line, great weapons, bringing in Saquon, doing everything they did this past season was amazing. But I do see that most of y'all pretty much agree. I haven't really even seen anybody agree with the statement on the screen. Will Hooper says that go get Milroe and Jameis Winston as the bridge. I'm not too mad at that. Ben Harris says that Milroe struggles with layup throws, explosive passer, hasn't worked out too much in the NFL recently. Jalen Milroe is getting the Joe Milton treatment right now. And he should be, because he was not that accurate in college. But I do think it's all mechanics-based, man. Like, you get this guy, you get the mechanics underneath of him, he'll stop having to rely on that hero ball and throwing the ball off platform. The consistency in his mechanics is not there. So when he gets into the NFL, I think that's going to be something that he will absolutely benefit from. Shout out to my dog. The Beard is in the building one time, y'all. He says, Beard here popping in to say what's up to everyone. Congrats on the Jevon Holland signing. Like him a lot. Hope everyone is well, man. Big shout out to the Beard, man. Just had the baby. He's on daddy duty right now doing that daddy daycare stuff, man. I got to pop up on you and, show out on my nephew one time, man, and see how things are going over there, man. Nothing but blessings to you and the family, man. Say what's up to Josie for me, and we're going to link up soon. We got a lot of draft talk and a lot of draft stuff to go over here, Beard, once you get right. So big shout out to the Beard one time in the building. All right, let's catch up. Chat is booming. Big shout out to everybody in here, man, that pulled up to rock out with me today on this impromptu kind of version of the Overreaction. Let me see. This is a new name in the building. I haven't seen this name. Shout out to Christian O in the building. Says Sanders didn't have a great offensive line, and plus he's learned from Brady. He's gotten better every year and has shown that he can get better. I think he's a great pick at number 3. Plus with Malik Neighbors. Yeah, I just think that, if you're looking at the 2025 season, you want to get the quarterback, and that is important. And like I said, I wouldn't be mad at Shedeur Sanders picked, number 3 overall, but I think that we got some better options here. If we can maybe possibly use some of our later picks to trade back up into the first round, you might still have a shot at Shedeur Sanders somewhere in the middle or late portion of the first round if he falls. I don't think that's going to happen, but I do think I wouldn't rule it out. Same thing goes for Jackson Dart. I would just love to be able to double up and get the quarterback and get the weapon or a big defensive piece for this unit. But I'm not mad at this take here. It's not something that I would totally disagree with. If it was on the Giant Overreaction here, I'd probably put a P in the chat and take the push on this one. All right, let's get off into the next Giant Overreaction. I like the way that one rolled. This one's going to be a little bit egregious as well, too. When I saw this one on my timeline, I was kind of like, dang, man, people are just in reach mode right now in the offseason. But let's get off into this next Giant Overreaction. This one comes from Tara B. Tracy Jr. I actually got this person blocked on Twitter. I ain't gonna lie. Somebody sent this to me in a group chat, and I was like, I gotta bring this one up on the Giant Overreaction today. So Tara B. Tracy Jr. says, Joe Schoen went from being the worst general manager in the league to being a quarterback away from having the best roster in the NFC. Not the NFC East, but the NFC. I don't know how I'm feeling about this one. Y'all let me know. If you think it's an overreaction, go ahead and put an O in the chat. If you agree with the statement on the screen, let me see you put a U in the chat to represent that you are taking the under. And if you need a little bit more time maybe to see who that quarterback is, you can put a P in the chat to represent that you are taking the push. Now, this is how I view it. Even with the right quarterback, the Giants don't even have the best roster in the NFC East. How can we have the best roster in the NFC? Look at what the Commanders did coming off a loss in the NFC Championship game to the Philadelphia Eagles, trading for Deebo Samuel, trading for Lermy Tunsil now. They've solidified that left tackle. They brought in another weapon to pair with Terry McLaurin, and the draft is not even here yet. No way in hell am I putting the New York Giants roster over the Washington Commanders. You still got the Eagles, who have the best roster, maybe not only in the NFC East, maybe in the conference. Still got A.J. Brown, still got Devonta Smith, still got Saquon Barkley over there, Jordan Mailata on the offensive line. Lane Johnson on the offensive line, Landon Dickerson, Cam Jurgens, my dog that I told y'all all about in the offseason last year coming into the year that they were not going to miss a beat with that tush push because Cam Jurgens was a dog coming out of Nebraska, former second-round draft pick, and that is how you do things. You bring in guys before you have to address that position so that they are already developed by the time it's time for them to become a starter. And they're coming off a damn Super Bowl. What are we talking about here? That the Giants are going to have one of the better rosters in the NFC. Don't forget about the Vikings, who won 13 games last year. They just brought back Byron Murphy. They just signed offensive guard Will Fries. They brought in Isaiah Rodgers at the cornerback position. Javon Hargrave. They signed Jonathan Allen, the former Washington Commander. Their left tackle, Christian Darrisaw, is coming back and going to be healthy off the injury from last season. Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson. They got J.J. McCarthy now, who looked pretty damn good in the preseason this past season. And who knows, they might even bring in another quarterback. Who knows? Andrew Van Ginkel's out there. Dallas Turner from last draft. Jonathan Grenard. Come on now. We cannot say that the New York Giants have a better roster than the Minnesota Vikings. The Los Angeles Rams, a team that was just a couple of plays away from being in the championship game and could have possibly beat the Philadelphia Eagles. Who knows? They still have a great roster. And, oh, yeah, they added Devontae Adams over there to fill in for Cooper Kupp. So I don't expect them to miss a beat over there with that young, on the incline type of defense that they have over there with guys like Jared Verse and Braden Fisk. Come on now. We can't say we got a better roster than them. They're still the Lions. They're still the Packers. I still think the Giants, they've made great strides in free agency, but I still think that they are a team that is closer to the bottom of the NFC than they are to the top. And our offense is literally the same unit from last year. How can we say that we're a quarterback away when literally all this offense has is Malik Neighbors and Tyrone Tracy, I guess you could add to that mix? It's still Wan'Dale Robinson at wide receiver. It's still Darius Slayton on the outside opposite of Malik Neighbors. It's still Theo Johnson, Andrew Thomas, John Runyon Jr., Jermaine Illuminor, and John Michael Smits at the center position. We don't even have a right guard right now. I put up the emoji for right guard like this. Who's going to play right guard? Kicking Evan Neal there? Maybe. No way in hell are the New York Giants one of the best rosters in the NFC. Not even a top 3, not a top 5 roster right now. Let me see how y'all feel about this one, and we'll keep it pushing. And we'll just scroll back a little bit. I see Gregory. Gregory, a Dallas Cowboys fan, says he's taking the over. That's ridiculous. It absolutely is. I don't know if these people just be trolling. You know, this always seems to come from an account that just has like some random New York Giant as the picture, and it's like Tyrone Tracy season or some shit like that. I don't know what's going on Giants Twitter, but these days I've been trying to like stay away from the comment section as much. I'll just throw out a take. Do what you will with it. You know what I mean? But Gregory says that's ridiculous. Simeon says the Eagles are going to repeat. I kind of agree with you on that. They are in position to repeat this year, no doubt about it. Michael Knight says, come on, bro. He says these people need to be drug tested. I do agree. Fob Blizz in the building says, but roster not as bad as most think. I don't think people think the roster's bad. Look at what we just did in free agency. I don't even think people think the roster's bad. So what is most people think? What is that? I don't know what that is. Right now, the roster has made improvements. We're talking about a 3-win team. They made a couple improvements in the secondary, and we're hoping we can stay healthy. But, you know, it's definitely an overreaction, like you said, Fob Blizza. I do agree with that. Jaden714 says it's an overreaction. He says these statements got to be jokes, bro. I don't know, man. Maybe people are treating it like that. That is possible. Deaton says it's an overreaction. It'll be a big improvement, but relax in capital letters. Definitely with you on that. Talking Eco said it's an overreaction. Eagles, Commanders, even the Bears still have a better roster. And I hate to say it as a Giants fan. That's facts right there. I forgot to talk about the Bears. Jaden said it's an overreaction as well. Momo Ziti says, I like the positivity, but let's be real. I'm with you on that. Zeke said, you. Agreeing with that one, huh, Zeke? Okay. Not mad at it. We got a you in the building. Will Hooper taking the overreaction on this. Vegas XD said, what are these guys smoking? I think they smoking that white stuff, man. It's got to be that white rock because I don't know what this is about. Sigma Surge said, wait. And he put like 1,000 O's. Derek Grant said it's an overreaction. Mr. Mini Guy's in the building. What's going on? He said it's still an overreaction. Brett M says it's an overreaction. Bluegrass is taking the push. Ben Harris, Vegas, we get the point, y'all. It's an overreaction. I got to agree with y'all on this one. This one is definitely an overreaction. Sigma Surge says, bunch of O's. John said, big motherfucking O. Pat Barrio said he taking the push on this one. Okay. I'm not mad at y'all taking the push. I just think offensively, the Giants have not done enough to warrant a statement like this. You're talking about an offense that was ranked, 31st last year in scoring, 16 points per game, and we think a quarterback's going to come in here and change that? There's nothing new on the offensive side of the ball. But who knows? Maybe some news will come out today, and maybe they'll try to improve what they got going on the offensive side of the ball. But for me, yeah, I got to say that this is absolutely an overreaction. Ryan Williams says, I got to agree with you, bro. To me, the Giants do not have anything that will be competitive for the NFL. This team is built horribly by Joe Schoen. Yeah, so far I got to agree with you on that one. Definitely got to agree with you on that one. Vegas XD said, crack? Yeah, I'm definitely with y'all on that one. Let's keep it pushing and get off into this last Giant overreaction, and then I'll get y'all up out of here. We're trying to keep this stream as short as we can. Maybe a good hour and a half will be enough time to be able to do it. But I'm excited about this next overreaction. This is the one that I really, really wanted to talk about moving into the NFL draft here. Let's get off into it. All right, this one comes from your boy Authentic. I posted this one. It got a lot of traction on Twitter. A lot of people agreeing with it. Some people saying, no way we should do this. I said now, and this was post free agency moves, now the Giants just need to trade up to the number 1 pick, draft Cam Ward, and bring back the legacy uniforms. What y'all thinking about this one? I'm going to keep my eye on the chat for real because y'all know I obviously think that this is not an overreaction, and I 100% agree with this statement on the screen because it came from your boy Authentic. I think right now, if the Giants want to make a true splash move here entering the draft, if it is possible, go out there, trade for the number 1 overall pick for the best quarterback in this draft, which is Cam Ward, a guy that one of our homies from the chat put me on to about 3 seasons ago, maybe, about a good 3 to 4 years ago in Cam Ward when he was transferring to Washington State. And I've been high on Cam Ward ever since. He has cleaned up some of those deficiencies. Once he got over to Miami, really, really put pen to paper over there and just put up a great season this past year. I'm a big fan of Cam Ward's game. I think he can do it all. He can extend plays with his legs. He shows you the mobility. He's got the arm talent that at one point in the NFL, I think, can ultimately be groomed into being elite once he fixes a couple of things in his mechanics as well. That's not to say that his mechanics are poor right now. Love the quick feet. This dude has great pocket awareness, can maneuver in the pocket as well. He's just the best quarterback in this draft by a mile. And there were people trying to tell me that Shedeur Sanders was quarterback 1 throughout the whole entire year for real. And that's just something that I never could get on board with. And I like Shedeur Sanders, but he's just not the kind of quarterback that I think is, worthy of that quarterback 1 position. Let's tap in with the chat and see how you guys feel about this one. Legacy uniforms included, along with trading up to try to go out there and get Cam Ward. Let me see. JDJ says he's taking a U on this one. He agrees, but bring back the medium Pepsi too. That's a good one. Shout out to G-Man 2011 in the building. He says we should get the quarterback of our choice, not just the one that's left. That would mean getting to the number 1 pick, so let's do it. Chaz G says that Cam Ward is a beast, but again, he's had an elite offensive line. Well, go back to his Washington State tape. He didn't have an elite offensive line back then, and he was doing the same stuff. I don't know if you remember when he was over there, but go back and check out his tape. And if you need some, I got all 22. Just reach out. Hit me up at Authentic, Authentic at All or Nothing Studios, or just reach out on Twitter. I'll send you some of the all 22 so you can look at it for yourself. When he had a poor offensive line play at Washington State, he was doing the same stuff. The turnovers were a little bit more egregious. He had a little bit of a fumbling issue when he was there, but he corrected that. But he says, can he do all those things behind this offensive line? And to speak on our offensive line, the Giants' offensive line is not as bad as I think people think it is. And we still have a little bit of time to upgrade within the draft, within free agency. But if they can stay healthy, in particular, a guy like Cam Ward will get behind this offensive line and be a beast. Deilla says, we need to just bring back the red jerseys and I'll be happy. I like the red jerseys too. I didn't like them with the gray pants though. I always thought that was kind of weird. I would maybe pair it with white pants or possibly pair it with some red pants and bring the red jerseys with the legacy helmet and red pants, I think would look fire. But I like the red jerseys. I'm a fan of them. Shout out to Javi ATX Bori for Boricua. He says, I agree 100% with this one. Yeah, for sure. I'm with you. Obviously, it's my statement. Talking Eco says he agrees. He's taking a U. I still think the Giants have more leverage over the Titans than most people think. Titans can draft or can get draft capital and still guarantee Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter in this case, and Ward is by the best by far the best quarterback in this class. I do agree with you, but when it comes to leverage, they could just draft the guy that they want and allow people to do whatever they want. But I feel you because it would give them some more draft capital. But at the end of the day, I do think that the Titans have the most leverage by having the number 1 pick. Michael Knight says, I agree. I love the legacy uniforms. Same here. They're my favorite. And a lot of people don't like that the helmet doesn't match the color of the jersey. But to me, that it gives it a bit of a distinct look that not many other teams have in the NFL. Simeon says he's taking the U. We know that they want a quarterback, and the legacy uniforms are sweet. Definitely agree with you on that. Powell says he's taking the U with the legacy uniforms, but a push with trading up unless they absolutely know that Cam Ward is their guy. If Dable goes out and says, I will trade up for Cam, just like he said about Jaden Daniels, then yes, let's do it. Vegas XD says, this is it. But if we sign Rodgers, I don't know how long I can wait to see Cam while Rodgers starts. I agree with you. And, from what I'm hearing, it's looking like Aaron Rodgers is going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler. Let's see. And Vegas said he is taking the U. Gregory said he's taking the under. Sounds like a plan. Throw the dice and shake up the drink. I'm with you on that. Shout out to 59 Ways to Groove in the building says, let Joe Shane's son make the trade up and pick Cam Ward. He's 1-1 on Daniels. That's fact. That's definitely fact right there. John Kirk says, what is the draw the line in the sand price for the trade up? I think it's a lot similar to what Powell was talking about earlier. So for me, I would swap the first round picks this year and give up an extra piece this year as well. Maybe a 3rd round pick or a 4th round pick and give up next year's 1st round. That's about where I'm at with it. Talking Nico said also Ward and Rodgers have similar play styles, and if the Giants get Rodgers, Ward can learn a lot from being behind him. Definitely. I agree with that too. Their play styles are similar. Guys that are mobile enough to extend the play and have, that, Aaron Rodgers has elite or had elite arm talent. I think that Cam Ward is knocking on the door of having elite arm talent. Jaji05 says, bottom line, Ward is quarterback 1. Go get him, period. Boss Les says he's taking the push because both jerseys are fire. I would want the legacy uniforms for the home uniforms, and then I would like the all-white color rushes with the legacy helmet on the road. Zeke Anderson said, I'm cool with it, but I want Sanders. And that last topic, I meant, okay, yeah, I got you on that. I thought so, because I know Zeke knows ball. I didn't think he was going to look at it like that. But Zeke is a guy that has Shedeur Sanders at quarterback 1, and, to each his own on their opinions on it. I like having a guy that possesses at least one elite characteristic, and I think Cam Ward presents a couple of those. DeIlla says, I'd rather see Cam fall to 3rd and not have to give up anything, LOL. I know that's not happening. I hope that too, and maybe there is a situation where that happens, but it's slim to none for me, for sure. Big shout out to Marjorie in the building one time. What's going on, Marjorie? Hope all is well with you. Marjorie says, I agree, but I'm not convinced that the Titans are not taking Cam Ward themselves. I'm with you on that too. I think if they're smart, they would take Cam. But to give you a little bit of details on general managers, first-time general managers, and if they have drafted a quarterback. When you look at the 32 general managers that rounded out the 2024 season, because a lot of these guys now have been fired since. Rand Carthen was fired. Antonio Pierce was fired. A few others. But if you look at the 32 general managers that ended the year and how many of them drafted a quarterback in their first year on the job, only 5 of them did that. So 5 of the 32. And I'm not saying that gives you a true accurate number on all the odds. I should go through the entire history of the NFL, which is going to be a project I am going to work on. But I wanted to start with the 32 that are active right now. And there's only 5 of them. So, the odds kind of say that they might not go quarterback. Rand Carthen, when he was with the Titans, didn't go quarterback first round in his first year there, but he did draft Will Levis in the later rounds. So it's no telling, but I do think it is an option on the table for the Tennessee Titans. So let me see. A lot of people agreeing with the statement. A lot of people aren't too upset with trading up to go get our quarterback of the future. Big shout out to John one time in the building, man. Appreciate you pulling up with the $10 super chat. He says, what's up, bro? Hope all is well. Just curious on your take. If the Giants can't move up to 1, I want Abdul Carter. If that were to happen, can you see Tibbs being traded for draft capital? I think he hit his peak at Oregon. This is how I look at it. The Giants, in their heyday of success, did not part ways with just the starting talent when it came to guys that were pass rushers, edge rushers, or guys that got after the quarterback. When you think about the NASCAR package and all the guys that went within that system, you know, from O.C. Umenyiora to Justin Tuck to Matthias Kiwanuka to Michael Strahan to all the guys that were a part of that moving pieces on the defensive line to be able to have fresh legs to get after the quarterback. I wouldn't quite move on from Kayvon Thibodeaux just yet. The fifth-year option is going to be a decision to be made that is going to be a difficult one, because to give Kayvon Thibodeaux his fifth-year option is going to cost us, I want to say, about $17 million that season. Is he worth that at this particular point in time? I don't think so, but it won't hurt to have, you know, a bunch of guys on this defensive line be in a rotation. And I think that's how we're going to be best suited. You know, you went out there and you just brought in Chauncey Golston. You got Kayvon Thibodeaux, Brian Burns. We lost Azeez Ojulari. I would be okay if they brought in Abdul Carter without trading Kayvon Thibodeaux, at least immediately. If it's something that would happen down the line in the future, when you could possibly maybe address the defensive line through the draft and bring in some more potential pieces that could take over that place for Kayvon Thibodeaux, I'd be okay with it. I'm trying to think about some of the edge rushers that I'm you know, really high on coming into this draft. Savion Jones out of LSU could be a guy, day two guy I'm interested in. Shamar Stewart has definitely climbed up some draft boards for sure. Him and Nick Scorton are both a beast. I would definitely draft either one of them out of Texas A&M. Landon Jackson. I like Landon Jackson out of Arkansas. The build is really nice. But when I was looking at Jackson Dart's tape, the Ole Miss game versus Arkansas, where Jackson Dart put up 6 touchdowns in that game, Landon Jackson was like invisible. He did have 1 sack in that game, but for the majority of the dropbacks, he was invisible. So there's some talent in this draft for sure, especially at the top of the draft. You know, you're talking about a year or two before you would have to part ways with Kayvon Thibodeaux. I think I would keep Kayvon Thibodeaux right now. But big shout out to John. Appreciate you pulling up and rocking out with us today. So the last thing I want to go over before I get y'all up out of here, let me see what DeIlla's talking about there. He says, DeIlla says, I already know this is a touchy subject, but if Shedeur did fall and we already drafted Hunter, would you trade Dex to get him? I would not. Nah. I like the moves that are being made on the defensive side of the ball so far. And if you remove Dexter Lawrence, that's really going to hurt that unit. But I would consider trading some other players. I'm glad you said this right here while John was talking about Kayvon Thibodeaux. If it was a situation to trade Kayvon Thibodeaux to get our quarterback to move up in the first round, if Shedeur fell, I would think about that long and hard for sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. Chaz G says, I don't think we can afford to move up to 1. But I get it if we do. Would rather draft Shedeur 3rd and an offensive guard 2nd and D-line 3rd. I don't like the guards in this draft. I'm not spending a second-round pick on guards. I'm going wide receiver if the right guys fall. You know, imagine like Luther Burden is still on the board when we go to pick at 34. And while we do this, we kind of already got, you know, what's going on with this giant overreaction. Let me just put the draft picks on the board for y'all here. So at 34, if Luther Burden, Emeka Ibuka, Trey Harris, or Jaden Higgins is on the board, I'm going wide receiver absolutely right there. If not, I'm looking at defensive tackle. Aeneas Peebles out of Virginia Tech will likely be there at 34, and he's the ideal pick for me. Go look at his game against Cam Ward. He had a hell of a day, and he's got one of the best spin moves of any interior defensive lineman in this draft. If Derek Harmon out of Oregon is there, to me, Derek Harmon has a higher ceiling at the defensive tackle position than a guy like Aeneas Peebles does. Kenneth Grant from Michigan, if Kenneth Grant falls in this draft, I don't foresee this happening. He's going to be a first-round pick. But if he's there at 34, literally within seconds, you only got to think about it. Run the damn card up and draft Kenneth Grant. He is likely going to be the best defensive lineman in this draft, and I'm including Mason Graham in that. Kenneth Grant is a body, and he's pretty much Dexter Lawrence with more speed. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be as good as Dexter Lawrence, you know, as far as his career goes. A lot of things got to go right for that to happen. But Kenneth Grant is a next level type of prospect. This dude can get after the passer quickly. He can hunt down running backs. He's got hella speed, and he's a big, massive frame. So if Kenneth Grant is there, I'm absolutely drafting him there. Tyleik Williams from Ohio State is a guy I will consider at 34. He's another really good defensive tackle. He's not the kind of pass rusher that really gets after the quarterback. He's more of a guy that's going to be, plug up rushing lanes and really be able to help this running defense in 2025. The other guy that I really like is Darius Alexander out of Toledo. He's more of a sleeper pick, but during the combine, they were talking about this guy like he was going to be a first-round pick. And for me, he was like a sleeper. I thought he was going to be a third-round, fourth-round type of guy, but likely going to go in the first or second round. So that's how I view what we need to do in the second round. So I'm not going with a guard there's not many guards in this draft that I'm like, ooh, got to go get that guy. And there's not many offensive linemen in particular in this draft outside of like Armin Membu out of Missouri or Will Campbell out of LSU. There's not really many offensive linemen that I'd really want to draft. So for me, guard is off the table, but defensive line in the second round or a weapon like a wide receiver would be absolutely amazing. And I want to see what some of y'all takes are on some of these draft prospects I just talked about. Let me see. 59 Ways to Groove came in with a super chat here. Big shout out to the gang one time for the $4.99 super chat. He says Mason and Dex will allow the linebackers to play free, solid interior. It would be. It really would be. And, it's just if you want to pull the trigger on Mason Graham at 3, because if you don't, you probably not getting him unless you get a trade back scenario where you could stay within the top 8, top 10. That's where I view Mason Graham going. I think he's going to be probably a top 5, top 6 draft pick, but that would be awesome. Kenneth Grant to me would be better. Just go look at some of the tape. Like Kenneth Grant would just be better. I love Mason Graham. He's going to be a great pass rusher, and he does a lot of things well. He can just really get past double teams quickly. He uses a lot of his first step to get to the passer. Kenneth Grant is body, rushing lanes, can do it all, and I think that Mason Graham benefited from playing next to Kenneth Grant this past season. But he was kind of in and out of the lineup, a guy that was being used kind of like not necessarily rotational, but there were times where obviously the stamina became an issue because he's a very big frame. But I like them both. Kenneth Grant, Mason Graham, both awesome. So let's see what people are talking about as far as draft goes. Off Broadway said Luther Burden in the second round. Let's get it. Definitely with that. Ben Ayers said running backs in day 2 will be good. That's very true. Y'all know I'm high on Brashard Smith out of SMU. Shout out to my dog Jay Gatsby who put me on to him. I think he would pair very well with Tyrone Tracy. And for those that don't know, Brashard Smith, he had one of the top 3 40 times at the combine. He's a guy that catches the ball out of the backfield tremendously. Speed on 1,000, can hit those home runs. He's a playmaker that you'll be able to use all over the field and take a little bit of attention off of guys like Malik Neighbors and Tyrone Tracy. Let me see. Chaz G's talking about the Miami tackle that can play guard too. Kind of reminds me of Jonah Monheim as well, who's a guy that's versatile. But to me, those aren't early day 2 picks, in my opinion. Big Dog Status said, you think Jimmy Horn will be available in the second round? Absolutely. Jimmy Horn ain't going first round. Jimmy Horn might be there in the 4th round. Jimmy Horn might be a day 3 guy. People are going to look at his size, but he's absolutely a playmaker. I'm a fan of Jimmy Horn. In mock drafts that I've been doing, he's going in like the 6th round. So we'll see how NFL teams and organizations view him. But I don't foresee Jimmy Horn being a guy that's going to be drafted in the 4th round or first round. Matter of fact, I'll all but guarantee it. He won't go in the 1st round. And I don't think he'll be early 2nd round either. There's too many wide receivers in this draft for somebody to overlook some of those names that I said and draft a guy like Jimmy Horn. It wouldn't surprise me if LeJontay Wester would be a guy that could get drafted before Jimmy Horn. Will Shepard didn't get invited to the combine. And then you got Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter's definitely going to be a top 3, top 5 pick. Simeon says, I really like Emeka Ibuka. Definitely. He's a beast. DeIlla says, I'm big on Ibuka. Can't go wrong with an Ohio State wide receiver. That's facts. He's almost like baby JSN. That's how I look at him. He's a guy that can come in, play the slot, do a little bit of stuff on the outside as well. Pal 11 says, I agree with Kenneth Grant. Now, that can be a great defensive tackle, too, for Dexter Lawrence. Absolutely, man. Can play that 3-tech. He's a dog. Danny Duds, shout out to Danny Duds in the building, says, I'm still recovering from Daniel Jones PTSD. Yeah, man, got that little contract with the Indianapolis Colts. Now we got Indiana Jones. Is that what they're saying now? Indiana Jones. I like that. Adam, let me see if I can say this right. Adam Gorseca, maybe it's Gorseca, says Darius Alexander, please. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Darius Alexander out of Toledo. Has a little bit to clean up in his game. He's a bit of a raw prospect, but I'm a big fan, and his build is just absolutely ridiculous. Welvin says, I'm begging for Tyleek Williams in the second round. Big fan of Tyleek. And I also like JT Tuamoli, who plays the edge as well for them. Another probably like I'll say a day 2 pick. Ja G05 says, Kenneth Grant reminds me of Keith Hamilton. Get him at 34, then trade your 2/3 to trade up and get Jaden Higgins. That will be flames right there. That will be flames. Love that plan. Let's see what else we got. John says, I like the kid Ratledge from Georgia, but 3rd round, not 2nd. I agree with you on that as well. Chaz G says, I'd take every guy you named at defensive tackle, honestly. The draft is deep at defensive tackle, so I figured we could grab whoever is left in the 3rd, and it'd still be a great improvement over what we have and great with Dexter Lawrence. Totally. There's so many defensive tackles in this one. Like, I'm trying to think of some guys I might not have named that you could get in the 3rd round. Oh, Jordan Phillips out of Maryland, my dog. Definitely could be a 3rd, 4th, 5th round pick possibly as well. TJ Sanders out of South Carolina. There's Deion Walker out of Kentucky, he's more of a project, in my opinion. He's plays a little bit too upright. Huge frame. Dude's like he might be like 6'6", 6'5", something like that. But he needs to bulk up. He needs to hit the weight room and do squats and get his legs better. All the strength is in his upper body. His lower half it looks like, smaller type of defensive end or something like that. Joshua Farmer out of Florida State, big fan. J.J. Pequise out of Ole Miss has good tape, but the combine numbers weren't that great, and the combine performance wasn't that great either. You got the big boy Cameron Jackson out of Florida, maybe 5th round, something like that. Nazir Stackhouse out of Georgia. Big fan of him as well. So ton of defensive tackles in this draft. If you need some of these names later, just hit me up on Twitter and I'll get you in the right direction. John said he's biased because he's a Georgia Bulldog fan. I feel you on that. Georgia produces good talent though. Old man Rob says, I'm a Michigan fan and Grant is a beast. Let's go. Yeah, I love his tape. All the quarterbacks that I scout, when you see them go up against Michigan, like, you just see Grant is just all over the backfield. He's just one of them dudes, man. Big frame, hunting down running backs. I'm a fan of his game. Big Dog Status said Jimmy Horn is a dog. Yeah, he is. He's a guy that, catch and go, can get you the yak stuff. Smaller frame, but I'm a fan of his game. Josh says that Will Shepherd is a super sleeper. He is. Could be a UDFA possibly, too, being that he was a guy that was not invited to the combine. Him and Efton Chisholm out of Eastern Washington, they're 2 sleepers for me as UDFAs. Go check them out. Have great tape. Let me see. Nova said, how do you feel about this year's class for receiver overall? I don't necessarily view it as a strength this year. Oh, it's absolutely a strength. This the reason why people aren't viewing it as a strength. There's no Jamar Chase for real in this draft outside of maybe Travis Hunter and Teteroa McMillan. But the middle type of wide receivers, those guys that can be developed and could ultimately be wide receiver 2s, possibly be wide receiver 1s, there's a ton of them. Let me give you some names. Outside of all the guys I talked about already, Teteroa McMillan, Luther Burden, Matthew Golden, Travis Hunter, Emeka, Trey Harris, Jaden Higgins, those guys to me are the cream of the crop that can all have the potential to be a wide receiver 1 one day. There's Jalen Noel out of Iowa State who can come in and play the slot. Jalen Royals who can do it all. He's pretty much near the kind of prospect that Matthew Golden is. Kyle Williams out of Washington State, I would love to see a bit of a reunion between him and Cam Ward. If we could draft Cam Ward, that'd be awesome. Don't forget about Jack Besh out of TCU, who lit up the Senior Bowl, had a fantastic performance, and his tape is amazing. He was a sleeper at first for me, but considering the way that he's rising draft boards, he's no longer a sleeper. My favorite project late in the draft is the guy who played opposite of Jack Besh, Savion Williams. Savion Williams is a guy who is built like Joe Milton. That's how he's built, like 6'4", strong as hell, DK Metcalf type of build. They had this dude over there playing quarterback so that he could run wildcat shit. He was playing running back. He was playing tight end. He was playing slot wide receiver. He was playing out there on the X playing wide receiver. And I know, TCU wide receivers, people are scared to draft TCU wide receivers because of what happened with Jalen Reagor, what happened with, what's my guy with the Chargers? Johnston, what's his name? Quentin Johnston. They're looking at that like these guys produce draft busts. Savion Williams has that build. Xavier Restrepo is going to come into this league and be an absolute dog. He's just a guy that can get open and make plays. Isaiah Bond, who played opposite of Matthew Golden at Texas, ran a pretty fast 40 at the combine. He's another guy that can come in and be that like fake-ass Xavier Worthy type of vibe. Ricky White, I talked about. Jackson Meeks is a guy that was not invited to the combine, who played at Syracuse with Kyle McCord. He was Kyle McCord's number one option outside of the tight end. What's my dude? Aronde Gadsden. Jackson Meeks, he's a dog. Put up 1,000 yards this past season, 7 touchdowns, wasn't invited to the combine. You're going to be able to find him later in the draft or possibly a UDFA. Torrey Horton, Colorado State, not on people's radar because he was injured this past season. You're seeing Tyler Shuck, the quarterback, rise up draft boards right now. Ja'Cory Brooks, his wide receiver one, is a big reason why Tyler Shuck had a good season. Ja'Cory Brooks is an absolute dog that can play the outside. Great day 2, maybe might fall to day 3 type of wide receiver. Ty Felton out of Maryland, who I had no idea. And I watched Ty Felton as I shot content for the University of Maryland this past season, all their home games and a bunch of practices. Ty Felton didn't look like he was a 4.38 type of speed wide receiver. I thought he was going to run like a 4.4, 4.5. Ty Felton is a day 2 guy you got to keep your eyes on. Caden Prather, day 3, I think. Pat Bryant out of Illinois has a very, I'd say like a similar skill set to guys like Jackson Meeks and Ja'Cory Brooks. He's a guy that can play the outside, day 2, day 3 type of dude. I know you guys saw Alec Io Manor at Stanford with his game against Colorado where Travis Hunter could not stop that guy. And Travis Hunter's a really good corner. Io Manor is going to be a day 2 pick, really good. Tez Johnson out of Oregon, speedster, very undersized, didn't run a good 40. His 40 was like 4.5. He's a little guy. The lightest frame we've ever seen at the combine. He weighed in at 154 pounds. But he can make plays. Go look at his tape out of Oregon. Nick Nash out of San Jose State's another guy. Listen, I could go on and on about wide receiver. There's a ton of wide receivers in this draft. Whether they'll pan out, we saw it with guys like Javon Baker last year out of UCF, I believe, when the Patriots drafted him. I thought he was going to be a really good, contributor this year, but it just didn't work out for him. But ton of wide receivers in this draft, Nova. Go check them out. There's a lot of great YouTube channels that have made compilations too, of a lot of different wide receivers that are in this draft. That you can check out. A lot of them, ton of them. I definitely think that the Giants can find a way to get a wide receiver early in the second round, or if they have to wait, till some of these day 3 picks, there'll still be some guys out there for them. Let me see. James Jones is talking about the running back out of Rutgers. I didn't like his style that much, but day 3, he could definitely be a guy. For me, day 3 is Brashard Smith. If Brashard Smith is there when we pick like 154, round 5, pulling that trigger immediately. He's going to come in and be a playmaker, and the Giants need people that are going to score touchdowns. If it's not Brashard Smith, maybe Jaden Blue out of Texas, another guy that has a lot of speed and can take it to the house as well. DeIlla says, what do you all think about our interest in Ayuk? Man, I think Ayuk is just an overpay, man. Like, I didn't like that contract, and Brandon Ayuk was on my fantasy team, and just, it was just such a fucking letdown this year, man. I like Brandon Ayuk. He's a good player, but he would be better off with a quarterback that relies on timing, like the Tuas of the world and whatnot. I think that really helps him out. And with Brock Purdy being, an anticipatory quarterback, I think that really helped him out. Let me see. DeIlla also said, and I know Thielen wants a new deal with Carolina, so who knows, he may get released. He's their best wide receiver, though, outside of Jalen Coker. I think that ultimately is going to be Xavier Legette over there. I like Xavier Legette. Chris Macon, I think it's Macon or McCone, says, what do you think about Scatterbo in the later rounds? I'd be okay with it, but I don't want to bring in a power running back right now. I want to bring in a running back that can pair well with Tyrone Tracy. I think Tyrone Tracy does the power stuff pretty well. So I want more of a third down specialist, a guy who can catch the ball out the backfield. And, once you get the ball in his hands, can make some touchdown-like type of plays, take it to the house, home run type of stuff. But Scatterbo is, he's a good back. former fullback, and he runs like one. I like his style, Mike Allstott type of vibes. I'm cool with that. Let me see. The Illa's talking about Brandon Ayuk coming into camp late. Yeah, that definitely didn't help him out. The last thing I'm gonna talk about here, and we're gonna get out of here at 1:45 for sure. 2 hours is too much for this type of stream. We'll get out of here at 1:45. But there's a quarterback that is in the draft this year that I got a chance to look at a bunch of games, a bunch of all 22 of his. And shout out to my plug. If you're watching, you know who you are, man. Been blessing me with tons of all 22, not only this season, but last season as well. But this quarterback to me is rising up the ranks, and this is the quarterback out of Indiana, which is Kyle Rourke. I think Kyle Rourke is a guy that the Giants might be, in a good position to draft late in the draft, maybe spend your last draft pick on this guy, because I don't think he's going to be a quarterback that's going to go in the first round, because he had an injury this year that he played through. And he put up 29 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, and Indiana was on the map this year. I think they only lost one game the entire season. And a lot of people are writing off Curtis Rourke because not a lot of people are talking about him, because he played the entire year with an ACL tear. And they found out at the end of the year that the ACL was indeed torn. So he had to have surgery at the end of the year after he played all his games. And he didn't fare too well in his last performance against Notre Dame, and that was the game that got Notre Dame into the national championship. But this dude, from an accuracy standpoint, I don't think there's a more accurate quarterback in this draft not named Cam Ward. This dude can make throws that really wowed me when I was looking at his tape, and he is a guy that has not put up big performances against the upper echelon competition, but I think that he's a bit of a project that you could groom. If it's not going to be a guy like a Jalen Milroe on day 2, I absolutely think that Curtis Rourke is a guy that possesses a skill to play the game with the proper timing and to play within structure. And I think that is what this offense has been missing. And listen, this is a bit of a hot take, but I think that when all's said and done, if Curtis Rourke were to get the right opportunity, it would not surprise me if he ultimately ended up being the best quarterback in this draft. Like, I just think from an accuracy standpoint, from a quarterback build standpoint, he's like 6'4", 200 some odd pounds. He's a tough kid that stands in the pocket, plays with great anticipation. It wouldn't surprise me. And I just think he's being overlooked, obviously, because of the injury. And because of that injury, not a lot of people are talking about him. But I think that he is almost the perfect prospect. The one thing that he lacks is he doesn't have that kind of velocity on his throws like what you see from some of these guys coming out, like a Cam Ward. I think his velocity is more near what we're seeing out of a Shedeur Sanders, but he does have better arm talent. Like, when it comes to throwing the ball down the field, Curtis Rourke can make all of those throws. And I do think that let me see, I want to make sure something here. Okay, yeah, we got that. But I wanted to put you on and just kind of, put the bug in your ear if you haven't checked out Curtis Rourke. I'm working on a compilation now that I'm going to post to the channel here in the next couple of days. I might even get to finish it today. But I'll start by just showing you one of his throws. And this is the throw that really made me go. First, it was a YouTube channel that I follow. I'll let them remain nameless right now. But it's a YouTube channel that I trust. One of the evaluators that is one of the better evaluators, in my opinion, that is actively an offensive coordinator right now. And, just really follows quarterbacks, was at the combine. And when I heard him say Curtis Rourke as his quarterback 1, I was like, he didn't have Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders as his top 2 quarterbacks. He had Jalen Milroe at number 2, and he had Curtis Rourke at number 1. And I asked him why, and he said Jalen Milroe's at number 2 simply because people are overlooking how good of a thrower that he is right now. And the things that need to be ironed out are things that on an NFL level are easier to iron out. And then he said Curtis Rourke because he's the purest quarterback in this draft. And I was just like, wow, I haven't heard one person say that Curtis Rourke is the number 1 quarterback, or let alone even a top 5 quarterback in this draft. So I hit up my plug and I said, look, man, first I looked at all the stuff on YouTube that I could find, and then I hit up my plug and I said, I need everything you got on Curtis Rourke, man. I need to do a deep dive on this kid. And looking at his game against Michigan, which wasn't one of his better games, it was a decent game. There were some throws on the tape where I was just like, holy smokes, this kid has it. He has it. The anticipation, is the number one characteristic that I think he has better than every quarterback coming out in this draft right now. So I'm going to show you a bit of the all-22, and I did a couple of edits to it to make it a little bit more interesting. I ended up putting the sound behind it and just highlighting the players just so you can see some things about it. But this is going up against Mason Graham, and Mason Graham is in his lap. I might show it twice, but take a look at this throw from Indiana quarterback Curtis Rourke.
So much he could take one guy away, really changes his defense.
At the 36 of Michigan. Rourke straight drop this time. Gonna go long. Airs it. Got a man there. Got it. Elijah Surratt. Touchdown.
Watch the patience right here. He just doesn't run deep. Watch the fake right there. And they got him. Patience. Well coached.
I mean, look at that ball, man. And that is consistently on his tape. He has shown that's an NFL throw, in my opinion. It reminded me of Jaden Daniels this past year when he hit Terry McLaurin on that right sideline with the free rusher, knowing that the way that he adjusted the protection, that the fade route was hot on his right, and getting that ball out quick. There aren't many quarterbacks that can make that throw. Curtis Rourke also has NFL backside digs where he's going through the progressions extremely quickly and getting to his backside dig. I haven't seen that from a lot of these quarterbacks. His arm talent kind of reminds me of Michael Penix Jr. without the zip. Like Michael Penix Jr. made throws like that religiously on his tape at Washington. But, Michael Penix also showed you that when it was time to ramp it up and deliver a rocket, that he could do that. So I challenge you guys to go out there and, get a look at Curtis Rourke. He's a guy that's not going to be ready for the 2025 NFL season. So if you draft him late, he's a guy that, you're going to have to, sit the bench, chill for a year and whatnot, and then be ready for 2026. But spending a late day 3 pick on him would not bother me at all. Let me take this super chat from the homie Elias Wiskovich one time in the building. What's going on, my dog, with the $4.99 super chat? He says, if we're GM and Cam and Shador are unavailable, are we losing sleep drafting Mason Graham or Travis Hunter and trading back into the first to grab Jackson Dart under Russell Wilson? Absolutely not. I'm going to love that. That's almost one of my ideal situations right now. So I'm all for that. I think that's a great way to begin the season and, get the transition of this rebuild happening. You bring in a veteran quarterback like Russell Wilson, who's more than capable, who put up some really good numbers last season with the Pittsburgh Steelers, really showed you that he could push the ball down the field, maybe better than Aaron Rodgers does at this point in his career. So sign me up. I would love that. And like I said, Jackson Dart is my quarterback too right now going into the draft. We'll probably do one more updated rankings before we get to the draft. But, yeah, I'd be totally for that, man. I appreciate you supporting the channel, Elias. That definitely goes a long way, my dog. Appreciate you pulling up. Let me see. Ben Ayers said that Drew Allar is going to Drew Allar will be a top 5 pick next year. I do agree, especially if he improves this year too. I mean, he's got the build. He's got that Ben Roethlisberger type of vibe. I love that. Chaz G said, great throw. DeIlla said, hey, it's 1-on-1. Take the shot. He knew the read. Right, with the hot concept. I loved it. I love seeing throws like that. And then being that Mason Graham is literally in his lap, he couldn't even step into the throw, that it was that accurate. Loved it. And the wide receiver who caught that ball, Elijah Surratt, he's going to be a guy. He's just got to clean up the drops. He had a couple of drops on his tape. When studying Curtis Rourke, I definitely noticed that. A ton of drops from Elijah Surratt. But he's definitely a playmaker across the middle of the field and on the boundary like you saw right there. Ben Ayers said that Rourke going against good competition consistently as well. Yeah, he's a guy that played some big-name teams as well. Bookend Tackles says that tight throwing motion, too, less likely to have it knocked out. Absolutely. Nathan Rourke is his older brother who played in the league and had that crazy preseason play where it was just some miracle play where he scored a touchdown. I can't remember what happened, but it was wild. Gregory said, good stuff, authentic as usual. Everyone have a great day. Gregory, hope you have a great day as well. Off-Broadway 718 said, a dude named Curtis with a K. He said, F yeah, get him. I feel you, bro. That's just like, look, I was saying when we brought in Chauncey Golston, I was like, yeah, if you know, Menace to Society vibes about Chauncey, I like that name. You know you a dog when you got a name like Chauncey. Chauncey was in the hood, making some moves for sure. Book and Tackle says, man, every time I hear the name Penix, I cry a little. Yeah, I definitely feel you. And Simeon said, Authentic, thank you for sane Giants talk all day, bro. You know that's why I'm here. That's definitely why I'm here, man. But that's going to do it for this edition of the Giant Overreaction. Salute to all of you guys pulling up, watching this live, and for everybody that's going to catch this on the replay. If you new here, man, and you digging the vibes, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Shout out to the gang, too, man. Y'all got us to 5,700 just a couple of days ago. We appreciate that. Y'all know that this little small corner of the internet that we call Authentic in the Beard is never about numbers or about trying to, have a flashy channel or any stuff like that. We're all about just trying to provide value within the community. I'm not trying to copy what anybody else does in the Giants community or within the NFL community for that matter. And that is why this year you're going to see a lot more content that is a derivative of not just the New York Giants and the NFC East, but we're going to be doing a lot of stuff that surrounds the NFL as well. So I appreciate y'all getting us to 5,700. But like my homie Ethan used to always say when we would get on stage during the rap stuff, it don't matter how many people are in the crowd, whether it's 2 or 2 million, we got to go out there and do what we do and provide value. And that's all I'm trying to do over here at Authentic in the Beard. So as we get up out of here, man, if you enjoyed the vibes today, let me see those bicep emojis in the chat, man. Big shout out to the gang. Y'all know what it is. Authentic in the Beard. We end every stream the exact same way. Y'all know what it is, man. Keep raising that bar. Keep living those dreams because the universe flows in Technicolor and surround sound. And a life without dreams is a life in black and white. Shout out and rest in peace to a New York legend who came up with that saying, Combat Jack. I think the best podcaster that has ever graced this earth for real, had the best show. The Combat Jack show was just one of my favorite podcasts. And I really haven't even looked at hip-hop podcasts since then. Joe Budden occasionally, but for the most part, Combat Jack, he paved the way for what you see today in the hip-hop community. So rest in peace to him and salute to him. And for all of y'all that tuned in today, I thank y'all, all the super chats donating to the channel to support what we do over here at Authentic in the Beard. I definitely appreciate that, man. Y'all enjoy. And like I said, man, we popped up. We had to pop out and show y'all on a Wednesday for the gang, man. Y'all know what it is, Authentic in the Beard. Y'all enjoy the rest of y'all Wednesday afternoon. The weather's pretty decent. Hopefully you can step outside. I might try to make a little mixed drink or something, sit out on the porch and maybe watch a little bit more All 22 today, man. I appreciate y'all time and appreciate y'all supporting this channel throughout the years, man. Me and my girl was up late last night talking about this, how fast, the time has gone since the pandemic. We're 5 years removed, y'all, since they announced the pandemic. And time is just flying by, and the pandemic had a lot to do with why we started this channel. But we appreciate y'all, man. I want y'all to know that from the bottom of my heart. We could not do this without y'all. So enjoy the rest of y'all day. We'll be back sometime next week to tap in. Let's cross our fingers that we get some quarterback news here for the New York Giants in the next couple of hours here when they start, getting these contracts inked and whatnot. But enjoy the rest of y'all day. Stay blessed and keep raising that bar, y'all. I'll catch y'all on the flip side. Peace.